And now here's a story from me about what happened in high school. It was during my final exams. I had a test coming up for my photography/media class, and I had paid no attention in class all throughout that year. So just before the exam, I wrote pretty much the entire book on photography and media on a single sheet of paper. I condensed the whole thing. So during the exam, I unfolded the paper just in the middle of the room, no fucks given, and I started to copy paste all the answers on there. The room was pretty big, there were a lot of students, so it wasn't too big of a deal. No one really noticed, I just kept hiding it every time the teacher came by. When the results came in, the teacher, who really didn't like me very much, said, "Good job, I'm incredibly suspicious as to how you did good on this subject that you've never shown any interest in." Now, obviously the better strategy would have been to write all the answers on my penis, but at the time, I had most of a brain. When Pandora was in 5th grade, her first and only year at a public middle school, she was in physical ed playing dodgeball. About 15 minutes in, Pandora was sent to the office and given a detention slip for the grave violation of dodging the balls that were being thrown at her. The reason the teacher gave was that Pandora had been using the other students as shields, when she had simply just been hanging back and giving balls that went back that far to others in her team. The teacher was just annoyed that a team led by Pandora, which included the other weirder group of middle school, beat her team in a district-wide dodgeball challenge. Primary school was serious shit!
Danger Dolan made a rather embarrassing mistake with Easy Mac. The word easy is literally in the name, but he still found a way to screw it up. The recipe says to put pasta and water in the bowl, cook, and stir in cheese mix. Now, from these, which step do you think Dolan skipped? Turns out he forgot to add water. Dolan placed dry pasta in the microwave and pressed cook. After a minute, Dolan and his brother noticed there was smoke up in the ceiling, but thought it was his brother's cooking as they were sharing the kitchen. After another minute, the smoke was so thick that they could barely breathe, and just then finally realized what had happened. They unplugged the microwave because the pasta inside was smoking and maybe on fire. The microwave was permanently damaged and Dolan had to replace it, but the saddest part was that Dolan never got his 4 p.m. snack.
When Slapped Ham was 11, he lived in an apartment with his family, and one day his mom told him to go to the store and buy eggs. He entered the elevator to go to the ground floor when a random young girl popped up out of nowhere and stood really close to him and whispered, "Hey, do you like Nintendo?" He answered awkwardly, yes. To which she screamed, "Oh, great! Do you like to eat waffles while playing it?" Luckily, the door opened and he yelled, "Sorry, gotta go, bye." He ran out and never saw the weird young girl again.
One day after school, Sid went to baseball practice when he saw 2 bearded men playing frisbee on a nearby course. One was in his 50s and the other was in his 20s. In the middle of practice, Sid watched as the 2 men began to fight. The older man hit the younger man with his arm, sending him to the ground. The mother of one of Sid's teammates called the police while the older man kept kicking and punching the younger man. There were at least 5 other people standing there telling him to stop, but he wasn't stopping. Within 5 minutes, the police arrived. One of the police officers tackled the older man while the others called an ambulance for the other guy. The older man was arrested and placed in a police car. Once everything was over, Sid asked one of the people watching the fight what happened. The person said that the younger man told the older man that he had a longer beard, but the older man disagreed. That was when the younger man called him Gandalf, and the fight ensued.
When Legna was in 6th grade, he had an irrational fear of bread. Legna had some bad experiences with moldy bread in the past, and it freaked him out. As a result, Legna never bought a sandwich for lunch that year. It got so bad for a little while that he had to wear a blindfold to lunch so he wouldn't have to look at other people's sandwiches. Every year, Dolan's parents force him to go to church for Thanksgiving. One year, Dolan was so bored in Mass that he leaned over and whispered to his brother,
"Hey, what's the difference between acne and a Catholic priest? Acne waits until a kid is a teenager to come on his face."
As Dolan's brother burst out laughing, the woman sitting beside them shushed him. Then she stared at Dolan's entire family as if they were the scum of the earth. Luckily, Dolan's parents never heard about it as far as he knows.
Once Doopy's friend told her that if she got full-on greasy fair food and then got on a ride that shot you up in the air 275 feet, then shot you back down and then up again repeatedly, they'd give her $5. He said he would pay for the food and stuff and still give her the $5 on top of that. Of course, she wasn't going to miss out on free food and a free $5, but what she learned is there's no such thing as free money, because the minute Doopy got shot back down the 275 feet, her stomach turned upside down and she threw up, and bile hit some unsuspecting birds and a poor tree, but mainly hit a civilian below who was waiting in line for the ride. Once Doopy got off, they demanded an apology and to help them wipe the vomit off. She helped the guy who got hit and then gave her his number because he thought she was a nice girl. But anyway, once he went off to do his own thing, Doopy's friend walked up and handed her the well-deserved $5, laughing his butt off.
Zaraganba dared his brother Dolan to eat a dust out of a vacuum cleaner while he was away. Dolan lied by saying that he would. While Zaraganba was away, Dolan emptied the vacuum cleaner to make it look as though he ate the dust. When Zaraganba returned, he paid Dolan $50. Later on, when he was throwing away a candy wrapper, Zaraganba saw all the dust in the trash. He snitched to their parents and Dolan was grounded for the rest of the day. But isn't it kind of messed up to make his brother eat dust out of a vacuum cleaner?
One day, Hellbent was bored and decided to skip maths class. He found an empty classroom to hide in and turned off all the lights. Then he killed time by playing games on his phone. Pretty straightforward affair. After a while, he heard a strange rustling sound coming from somewhere in the room. He tried to ignore it, but it kept happening. Hellbent looked around in the dark, but couldn't find anything. Just when he was about to give up, something black and white rushed past him. Hellbent crouched down for a closer look and saw a black furry tail with a white stripe on it. By the time he realized what it was too late. Hellbent screamed, fell backwards just as the skunk sprayed his disgusting gas all over him like it was goddamn Looney Tunes. Hellbent ran all the way home. He had to wash himself 3 times with tomato sauce just to get the smell out. This is the last time he ever skipped math class.
Emoji had a 9-year-old niece who was starting to take an interest in baseball. Emoji was a major fan of the New York Yankees and wanted his niece to support the team too. So, he decided to tell his niece that the team's rival, the Boston Red Sox, was a team of evildoers who pooped on tiny babies. His niece was utterly convinced that every single person who played for the Red Sox was involved in mass baby pooping before and after every game. She believed this for 5 years, until Emoji came clean and told her that none of the Red Sox players had ever dumped on a child.
Mrs. Feedy, Melissa's 3rd grade teacher, noticed a boy in her class was always late and he missed class multiple times a month. She didn't ignore this or punish the kid. She sat down with him and she asked him why. It turned out he was a child of a single mom who worked so hard his older siblings had the job of waking him up and getting him ready for school. Being much older and still mourning the loss of their father, they were skipping school and ignoring their task. So, Mrs. Theedy bought him an alarm clock and made sure he had breakfast by getting everyone to eat first thing in the morning. For the rest of the time this kid was in school, she gave him the help that he needed.
Spinal Palm is another one who loves messing with his little brother. Aside from convincing him that they lived in China instead of America, Spinal Palm's dumbest lie would have to be the time he explained where orphans come from. He told his brother that the reason orphans don't have parents is because they fell to earth from the sky. Spinal Palm's brother is so innocent that he genuinely believed this was true all the way to 5th grade.
When he was in 3rd grade, Salty Squid transferred to a new school. He thought that if he wanted to make friends that he would have to say something really cool. So once he noticed a girl who looked nice, he tapped her on the shoulder. As soon as she turned around, he whispered into her ear, "My dad's in the CIA and he taught me how to kill people with one strike of my thumb. Come to me if you need to handle a problem." She looked at him funny before he mouthed the words, "Tell no one." Squid completely forgot about that day until 2 years later when he was at lunch. The girl and her boyfriend came to his table. She motioned to her boyfriend with her eyes, telling Salty Squid to finish the job. He didn't know what she was talking about, but then her boyfriend punched him in the face, giving him a black eye. It wasn't until he was in the nurse's office when Salty Squid remembered his little secret back in the 3rd grade. The girl explained later on that she was with her boyfriend and his friends when they began to talk about who was the strongest. She mentioned what Salty Squid had told her and bragged about it to her boyfriend, who became jealous and insisted on seeing it for himself.
When Spinal Palm was very young, he was on a bus with his father. He was excited to be traveling on a bus and he stuck his arm out the window. Spinal Palm turned to his father and said, "Hey Dad, it's raining." His dad looked out the window. It was a bright sunny day and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Spinal Palm quickly realized it wasn't rain. At the front of the bus, a passenger who was having motion sickness was vomiting violently out the window. He looked at his arm. It was covered in chunks of vomit. The smell of the vomit made Spinal Palm vomit out of the window too.
When Slapped Ham was in the 6th grade, he went on a field trip to Greenville House. On the 4th day there, the teacher burst in during lunch and said,
"Alright, who threw their poo at the shower wall?"
She systematically went around asking questions and wouldn't let anyone go until they proved they were innocent. Slapped Ham was a suspect until the very end. During his interrogation, he broke down crying. He told the teacher that while he was scratching an itch in the shower, he felt something slide out of his butt. He didn't know what to do, so he panicked and threw the shit at the wall. Slapped Ham didn't want anyone to know it was him, but once it came out, he became a school legend.
Slapped Ham was a strange child. When he was 5 years old, he discovered he'd like doing something pretty disgusting. He would wear the same pair of socks for a whole week. At the end of the week, he would intentionally get them wet somehow, and then he would take them off, put them in his mouth, and suck them dry. His brother once caught him sucking his dirty wet socks and threatened to tell his mom. Slapped Ham had to bribe him not to snitch on him. Luckily, I can tell you that he no longer slurps his dirty socks.
Sidious noticed his brother had some strange bathroom habits. Whenever his brother goes to the toilet, he makes deep grunting noises when he's taking a dump. Once his poop is finally complete, he leans down to the toilet and yells, "Flush down, my king." He then will hit the flusher and start to dance wildly while the toilet empties. One time, Sidious caught him during his poop dance, and he just laughed. He turned bright red, and he ran away. What's wrong with you people?
Pringle was working at a local coffee shop once, and his day started out like any other. He served his usual customers, and when it came to the end of the day, he and his coworkers began cleaning the cafe. He was quietly enjoying the serenity of the afternoon and thinking about how chilled out his job was while he tied the garbage bag up. He took the trash out to the back door, but was stopped by something blocking the dumpster. It was a customer. The man looked Pringle straight in the eye, dropped his pants, and took a big steamy shit on the ground. Not the greatest way to end a shift.
One time, Pandora went out drinking with her friends for St. Patrick's Day. Halfway through the night, she lost her friends and met a cute guy who was just as drunk as she was. The pair hit it off right away and were soon hugging, kissing, and drunkenly declaring their love for each other. After a mean sing-along to the Backstreet Boys, the drunken stranger surprised Pandora by getting down on one knee and proposing to her. Pandora was really weirded out by this, so she made up a fake excuse and backed away from him. She never saw him again and sometimes imagines how her life would have turned out if she'd said yes.
Spincess's grandpa always seemed like he had just come back from some heavy drinking when she visited. She would sit on the couch for a few hours until her grandpa would give her a job. He told her to watch his dog while he was gone. The only problem is, her grandpa didn't have a dog. By his dog, he meant a porch decoration with the word welcome written on it. Spincess would bring the porch decoration inside, continue sitting on the couch for a while, and wait for her grandpa to come home. He paid her $50 for this. He's either finding an excuse to be generous, or he's losing his mind.
The funniest thing I ever seen a stranger do was when I was on a bus. It was a normal day, just your average run-of-the-mill day, pretty hot out here where I was living at the time, about 100 degrees or so, and the stranger was asking me a question. He looked up to me and said, "Hey man, you got any spare change, man?" So I told him I didn't have any change because I already used most of my money for the bus, but he kept on asking me the same thing. And then he did something really weird. He grabbed his shoe and he started smelling it, and then he asked, "Please, man, I need some spare change. If you can you put it in my shoe?" I told him once again I didn't have any spare change, but he wasn't taking that as an answer. So at the end of it all, he said this, "Alright man, you ain't got no spare change. That's cool, man. But you know, because you ain't got no spare change, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna jump off this bus." So I told him, "No, wait, don't do that. That's terrible. That's a terrible idea." I still don't have any spare change, but I told him, yeah, I'll give him some spare change if he doesn't do it. But he didn't believe me, so he told me he was gonna do something different. He said he'll do this instead. Alright, man, you know you look like an honest kind of guy. You ain't got no spare change, that's alright, man. Okay, but you know what, since you ain't got no spare change, I'm just gonna sit in this corner over here, yeah, and I'm gonna sniff my shoe all day. Ooh, smells like teriyaki and nickels. When he said that, I swear, I just started laughing out loud, and it was just too funny for me not to laugh. Afterwards, the guy seemed pretty cool, and right when I was about to leave, he just went and told me, "Hey man, take care, brother. You're not a bad guy after all." I'll never forget that dude as the teriyaki nickel shoe sniffer.
One day Froggy was working on the self-scan at the grocery store, and no one was coming through, so she decided it was a good time to attempt to let out a fart. She'd been holding it in for a while, and it was starting to get painful, but, being a girl, she was raised to always excuse herself if she needed to rip ass. She figured it wouldn't be too loud, but alas, she was wrong. Instead, a small toot sound slipped out. Just when she thought it couldn't get any more awkward, a customer who was in line looked up to find the source of the sound. Froggy just walked away, too embarrassed to own up to it.
Hellbent had a long-distance relationship with a girl who was a little off in a lot of ways, but she was still nice. They got along for a while, but the reason she broke up with him was because of a single comment. Hellbent said that he thought Harley Quinn and the Joker were bad for each other. Immediately after saying that, she stopped talking to him and even blocked him on Facebook.
Hey, what's the weirdest encounter I've ever had with a drunk person? Well, I remember distinctly when I was a teenager and I saw my first pair of titties. That's because there's this crazy kind of older drunk woman. She was running topless down the middle of the street, shouting something about how God is real, it's finally happened, he's real, he's coming. She just kept on running down the road. Everyone was looking at her, wondering what the fuck's going on. And all I'm thinking is, yeah, titties.
One time, Hellbent's class was getting ready for a big English test. They were about to begin when suddenly, a female student stood up and said there was an emergency and she had to go. When the teacher asked her what was so important, the girl said her hairdresser was going out of town. She said her hair was a mess right now, and that she only trusted it with Sandra. The teacher reminded her that the test was worth 40% of her grade, but the girl chose to leave anyway. This is why Hellbent doesn't understand girls.
The weirdest job Snoopy got paid to do was to wear latex suits for bondage photo shoots. Snoopy was tied up and dressed in different suits while pictures were taken of her. Alright, now it feels like I'm reading DeviantArt fanfiction, but whatever, let's continue. Some shoots had her with gags in her mouth, which she was fine with because she got more money the kinkier the shoots were. The kinkiest it got was being in a latex straitjacket wearing a human muzzle and making various sexy poses. After the whole experience, Snoopy walked away with $575. What, really that's it? She got ripped off.
One time Pringle was coming home from college when he got the sudden urge to look at himself. He looked around and saw that the street was empty. Then he found a parked car with dark tinted windows and he started checking himself out. He thought, damn, I'll look good. Then he tilted his head and struck a few poses. Just as he was doing duck face, the car's window started rolling down. Pringle was so shocked, he jumped. Inside, there were two hot girls who pointed at him and laughed. One of them whistled at Pringle and shouted, "Looking good, stud." Pringle was so ashamed that he ran all the way home. The dumbest thing Spincess ever did for money was when her friends gave her a latex fursuit that looked like a husky. They said they would give her $1,000 if she put it on and wore it around town. Spincess thought it would be funny, so she did it. The tail inflated, so it was hard to sit down. One guy even squeezed her boob and said, "Hey there, little pup." She ended up hiding in her friend's car while they put together most of the money, and she still has the suit.
In 9th grade, Hellbent worked out every morning. One day, he had a dream that he was trying to do push-ups, but every time he would go down, a little monkey would run in to put a tiny chick under him. Hellbent didn't want to hurt it, so he would go back up. When he did, the monkey would grab the chick and run away. Then, when he'd go down, the monkey would come back. This went on for about 5 minutes. The monkey ran away again, only to come back with a cake. Hellbent woke up really confused. He stopped working out after that.
One time, Shima caught a train home from university. She took a seat across from a sweet-looking old lady. The woman smiled at her and Shima smiled back. Time passed, and Shima noticed the woman had her hand hidden inside her bag. The old woman slowly took out an old-fashioned doll that had glass eyes and looked a bit like Shima. Suddenly, the old woman looked at Shima and grasped her doll tightly. Shima instantly felt a tight sensation around her throat like she was being choked. The old woman continued and was soon outright strangling the doll. Shima couldn't breathe. She stood up, walked to the door, and jumped off at the next stop, even though she wasn't home yet. The feeling went away as soon as she stepped off the train.
Froggy's boyfriend held spiders captive in individual clean glass spice jars and tortured them by starving them, shaking the bottles as hard as he could, shining laser pointers into their eyes to blind them, putting them under a lamp to burn them, and more. Froggy didn't even know the full extent of it. He kept them in a hut-style desk in their home office, so she didn't even know what was going on for months. By the time she found out, he was probably on his third batch of spiders, and he had around 12 in little jars. He wasn't even a weird teenager. The guy was a fully grown 24-year-old man.
Melissa was a really good student, but she had a substitute teacher who was super rude to even the kindest and hard-working students. One day she suspected Melissa was chewing gum, but clearly she wasn't. This teacher didn't care. She walked right over to her, leaned in close, and screamed, "Are you chewing gum in my classroom?" Melissa, of course, tried to deny the false accusation, but the teacher just wouldn't listen. Usually in this situation, ordinary teachers would give that student that attention. But this woman was not an ordinary teacher. No, she felt it was necessary to stick her finger inside Melissa's mouth and dig around for a full 30 uncomfortable seconds trying to find gum that wasn't even there. Melissa's parents called the school to complain, but the principal simply shrugged it off and said she had a right to search her if she suspected that the student had gum.
Melissa and her friend had a crush on the same guy, and neither of them would give him up. Melissa told her friend that if she could beat Melissa in a game, she would back down. Melissa won the game, so her friend started telling her crush that Melissa kicked her dog. The story spread through the whole school, so Melissa started telling everyone the exact opposite, that her friend had kicked Melissa's dog. Somehow, Melissa ended up winning the rumor war, and she ended up dating their crush. Melissa and her friend apologized and remained friends. Now, Melissa's friend has a boyfriend as well, and they both laugh when one of them brings it up.
The weirdest dream Froggy ever had was when she was walking to a friend's house. She was halfway there when all of a sudden, she turned into a doll and fell to the ground. She started to panic, but couldn't move. Soon, a little girl walked over and picked her up. She took the Froggy doll back to her house and began playing games. One of those games led to Froggy's head being taken off, and the shock of that woke her up.